In order to make your local water source potable, we often need to filter it. Therefore, in this final chapter, we will teach you the basics for making a Biosand filter that you can operate in your own home. Christina Nelson, an environmental engineer from Swallow International, explains how a Biosand filter works.
A biosand filter uses very small, fine sand particles to provide physical and biological filtration, and it can be used in a person's home or on a larger scale, and it can remove about 99% of bacteria and all parasites and worms, protozoa.
To make a Biosand filter for a home, all you need are the following simple items: screens of 0.5mm, 6mm and 12mm diameter to sieve sand, separation gravel and drain gravel respectively, 13mm diameter PVC piping with 3 90-degree elbows, waterproof glue, a stopwatch timer, a 70 to 100 litre volume plastic tank with a minimum height of 60 centimeters, and finally simple hand tools such as a saw, measuring tape, knife and sandpaper. Christina now explains to us how to begin making your filter.
The first thing is to gather the materials of the gravel and sand and a mesh or a sieve that can be used to sift the material in order to separate the larger gravel, the smaller gravel, and then the fine sand. So we want the 1/4 inch, the 1/8 inch, and then the fine sand, which is 0.15 to 0.35 millimeters. And the next step is we wash both the gravel and the sand with clean water, and that removes some of the bacteria, the sediment, the silt.
After your sand and gravel is completely cleaned so that no sediment remains in runoff water, you are now ready for the next phase.
Then we let the sand and the gravel dry in the sun, and the UV radiation from the sun also kills bacteria in there as well and reduces the bacterial contamination.
Once your sand and gravel is ready, you can begin to prepare your PVC piping. Start by first measuring and cutting 3 pieces of piping, which are connected together by 3 90-degree elbows. For a standard 60 centimeter high plastic tank, your vertical PVC pipe section and connecting 90-degree elbow should measure 55 centimeters high. After measuring the PVC piping, the piece of PVC that rests tightly on the bottom of the tank should also be perforated with many holes to allow water inflow. The holes must be small enough to prevent gravel entry. Remember to also block the end of this PVC pipe with a piece of gravel. Once your piping is ready, you can then cut a hole in the tank where the PVC piping will exit. This hole should fit tightly with the diameter of the piping to avoid water leakage.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
For all of the PVC elbows and the outside hole on the water tank, non-toxic waterproofing glues should be used to ensure good connections and a watertight seal.
Now pointing.
And then we put this. We won't like do it. Yeah, some good. We like measure it so that there's no awkward piece that goes in.
Finally, a third elbow is added to the protruding PVC pipe so that filtered water from the tank can be collected in a clean water storage pot. After installation of our PVC piping for our standard 60 centimeter high plastic tank, we then add large gravel of 12 millimeters in diameter to the bottom of our tank to a height of 4 to 5 centimeters. Next, we add small gravel of 6 millimeter diameter on top of this to a height of 5 centimeters. Before we add the sand, we then pour water into the tank. The height of the water must always exceed that of the sand during the installation process. Once water has been added to the tank, we can start to add the sand. Water and sand are then added in alternation during the rest of the installation process. Once all the sand is added, it should have a minimum height of 40 centimeters. The sand level should also be roughly 5 centimeters below that of the PVC elbow that exits the tank. At this point, we continue to add water to the tank until we find the standing water level, where water stops flowing from the tank. This should be roughly level with the PVC elbow exit to the tank. The standing water level should be 5 centimeters above the sand layer. If it is higher than this, add more sand, and if it is lower, remove sand until the appropriate level is reached. Make sure that the standing sand layer is flat once you have finished this process. Christina explains why maintaining this standing level of water is so important.
The water should settle where the bend in the pipe is, and then the sand level should be, we will make it so that it is at 5 centimeters below that. We want the standing water of 5 centimeters to be such so that it doesn't dry out, but on the other hand, it would allow oxygen to diffuse through that 5 centimeter standing water to the bio layer to keep it alive, because they are aerobic bacteria there, so they need oxygen.
At this stage, we then need to make a diffuser plate which sits on top of our tank and makes sure that the biosand layer is not disturbed when we add water. To make your diffuser plate, we recommend using a bowl that fits snugly inside the rim of the tank. The bowl should be perforated with tiny holes at a spacing of roughly 2 centimeters. When designing your diffuser plates, you should also use a stopwatch to check the flow rate of water through the tank. The water should exit the tank at a flow rate of between 0.1 to 0.3 meters per hour. This ensures that biological filtration can take place. Once the filter is ready, you should then do an initial flush with 40 to 80 liters of water to remove any dirt or sediment that might still be in the sand or gravel.
Roughly.
6.
Once this is done, you need to give your tank a 30-day period to build up a biological layer. During this time, you should add water at least once a day, which is equal to about a third of the volume of your sand. Please note not to drink the water during this period. After this 30-day period, the filter is ready for use for drinking water. After some time, you may find that your filter's flow rate slows down, making it impractical for home use. Christina now explains what you should do if this occurs.
Today we're going to do a swirl and dump. This is how we maintain the filter when the flow rate gets too low after a time when sediment has collected. So what we do is we take our finger, just dig in maybe a centimeter into the very top layer of the sand, and that'll break up that bio layer and kick it up and distribute it into the water, the standing water that's above the sand. So we're just going to swirl it around right now. And then you can already see that the water above it's getting darker because the sediment that has been plugging it has been broken up and is becoming dissolved into the water. And then we quickly scoop the water out and pour it out. We don't dig into the sand though, so we're not going to change the height of the sand. We're just going to scoop the water itself out. And while we do this, sometimes the sand that's in the water will settle again, so we can swirl it a little bit more, dig it up, and scoop all this water out, being very careful not to dig into the sand. So the bio layer, when we do this, isn't completely destroyed though, because some will remain. So we don't need to wait a complete 30 days again. That's only when we first initiate the filter, or if you take the filter apart and start from scratch. If somebody does accidentally dig into the sand while they do this, if they dig in, then that sand does need to be replaced. Because we don't want the depth of the water that stands above the sand to ever be more than 6 centimeters. Ideally, it's just 5 centimeters. So obviously, while I've done this, the level of the sand isn't even anymore. It's not flat. But once we refill it with water, we make sure that the top of the sand is very flat again. So there, that completes it. Now we're going to add our regular source water again to replenish the water. And we'll do that till it starts running again. We can flush it out. Then we make sure that the sand level is flat again. We measure to make sure it's about 5 centimeters of standing water above the sand after no more water comes out of the outlet pipe. And then we can keep using the filter again.
When you start operating your filter, please take note of the following key maintenance issues. Firstly, make sure to cover the filter with a lid when you are not using it. Secondly, the filter should be used every day. A pause period of a minimum of 1 hour to 24 hours is allowed between each pouring. Thirdly, never let the top of the sand dry out and maintain a water layer covering of 5 cm depth. Fourthly, do not change the source of your drinking water as your filter develops a biological layer adapted to this source of water. In addition, when choosing your source of water, you should always choose the cleanest source available. Finally, if available, always use an additional method to disinfect your filtered water, such as boiling or adding chlorine, as the filter is not guaranteed to remove 100% of bacteria.